Well, that was a bit of a surprise. Welcome and good evening. Welcome to another session of Days of Our Lives, otherwise known as the Coeur d'Alene City Council, January 16th. I'll call the meeting to order, and the clerk will note that all council are present. And we have an invocation tonight by Pastor Kirk Anderson of the Lutheran Church of the Master. And Pastor, if I see you brought some scouts with you.
They are members of Troop 3, not Troop. It's a troop that's a church sponsors at Lutheran Church.
Well, I wonder if after your invocation they could lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance then.
They would be proud to do that.
All right, wonderful.
They're here as part of a merit badge or some sort of citizenship in the community.
Great.
Right? Yeah. On my left is Evan, and over here is Kai. Evan Horan and Kai Owens.
Welcome, boys.
Okay. All right, thank you for the invite. I'm an interim pastor. Are you going to do the pledge first?
Pardon? No.
Okay.
Invocation.
Saw you get up. I got nervous. All right, I'm an interim pastor at Lutheran Church of the Master. It's located on the corner of Ramsey and Kathleen. A broad general assignment that I have as an interim is to clarify the membership. I'm going to tell you my story for a little bit, okay? To clarify the membership, who is solid, who is not solid, who is no longer interested in membership at the church, who has found another church to attend, or they have perhaps moved beyond life within any church. This morning, Richard Rohr's devotional reflection spoke on the parable called the weed and the wheats. The householder plants seed in his field, but during the night an enemy sneaks into the field and sows weeds. When the plants grow up, the servants say, "Master, did you plant good seed? Where did these weeds come from?" One of my more specific tasks at LCM in the last 3 months is to create a new pictorial directory. I labored long and hard to get a picture of absolutely everyone. In fact, I got quite earnest about it, if you will. In fact, I got quite compulsive about it, if you will. But some didn't want their photo taken. So here's my confession. I tended to feel like they were weeds that didn't belong in the directory. I tend to get impatient. I tend to get quite good at my moral gardening, or said another way, policing the pictorial directory. You know, saying, "Lord, I know how to do this. Lord, I know how to separate the good wheat and the weeds. I know how to create a perfect pictorial directory. I've got this." No, the parable continues. Allow the wheat and the weeds to grow up together. But Lord, I want to yank out some weeds. I want some definition about who are the good guys and who aren't worth much effort. I'm capable of being a black and white person, as anyone is. No gray area. No, the parable reminded me, our pictorial directory will include everyone. God is asking me to live with an imperfect pictorial directory, one without any absolute clarity, asking me to live with messy ambiguity. I am being reminded that our God is too big for being just one thing. Our God blesses everyone, as the saying goes, no exceptions. I am fairly certain that you deal with some of the similar temptations. We pray. Lord God, be present to this council. Bless them with your spirit, enabling them to discern when to seek absolutes and when to back away, to allow other ideas, other voices, and other opinions to shape the pictorial directory called the Coeur d'Alene City Council. Amen. Thank you, Mayor, for the invite.
And now, if you boys can lead us in the pledge and get us started.
Who's leading the pledge?
Keep doing it.
Go ahead.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And thank you, Pastor. Are there any amendments to the agenda? Seeing none, then we'll move on to public comments, which our erstwhile administrator is bringing up now. And we have several folks wishing to speak tonight. We'll start with Kevin Jester. Welcome.
Good evening. Kevin Jester, 316 Forest Drive, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. I believe that's protocol, right? Okay.
Correct.
Mayor Hammond and members of the City Council, thank you. I want to start off by thanking you for the work that you do in our community. It's greatly appreciated as you watch over the well-being of this community, so thank you very much. My wife Patty and I have lived near the North Idaho campus, shoreline of our lake, and City Park for the past 45 years. I've been a business owner in downtown Coeur d'Alene for over 20 years, now retired, pleasantly retired. I've served on several nonprofit organizations serving the community, and therefore I have a vested interest in retaining the quality of life afforded to those of us that call Coeur d'Alene home. Tonight I'm here to request consideration for an amendment to the comprehensive plan making the campus of North Idaho College a university zoning district. The amendment would safeguard the current North Idaho campus from future development other than higher education. The current zoning is a combination of R17, C17 PUD, and C17L. I believe it to be in the best interest of the community, the college, and the adjacent neighborhood to consolidate these into a university zoning district. I'm compelled to make this request due to the unpredictable status of accreditation that we have been witnessing over the past year, and just would like to give some stability to what actually happens on that property. What is it that I'm asking tonight, just to be clear and kind of summarize? I'm asking for amendment to the comprehensive plan. I can feel Hillary and Sean's eyes behind me drilling a hole, but they know how to do this. So, and how is this done? Well, it would follow protocol, and I'm far be it from me to establish what that protocol is. I have an idea, but I'll leave it up to them. Why am I making this recommendation? And again, it is to safeguard the current NIC properties and campus from development other than higher education. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Kevin. Patty Jester? Did you wish to speak?
Just that I am in support of this proposal. My name's Patty Jester, and I'm here just to say that I'm in support of this recommendation of consideration.
Thank you. Jonathan Burns? Welcome.
Thanks. My name is Jonathan Burns, 316 Military Drive, Coeur d'Alene. I also am in support of this consideration and would like to see our higher education protected.
Thank you. Ann Melbourne? Welcome.
Ann Melbourne, 210 North Forest Drive, Coeur d'Alene. I'm in support of the request to consider the university zoning.
Thank you. Catherine Boss?
I'm Catherine Boss, 328 Military Drive. Over 35-year resident of the Fort grounds. I'm an NIC graduate, and 2 of my children also attended NIC. And I'm very concerned about helping to do anything that we can to help the institution. So I also support this change in the property.
Thank you. Darrell Rennell? Darrell? Bill Elliott?
Good evening.
Good evening.
I want to speak in support of what Kevin suggested, also the University Zoning District. Barbara Elliott and I are proud parents of 2021 graduate of NIC and soon to be 2024 graduate of NIC. We'd like to see this remain to be an educational zone. We want to be sure that not a small group of people, for whatever their personal whim or whatever their ideological or maybe even short-term gain economically might consider, would do something that would cause irreparable damage to this community and to the residents. So we're very much in support of this idea of creating a university zone.
Thank you. Okay, that ends our public comment. We'll go now to announcements. City Council, have any announcements? Yes.
Well, Mr. Mayor, under announcements, I'd like to respond to the public comment. As you know, council had a white paper prepared. Randy Adams, our city attorney, did that for council to understand what actually is a university district, where it has been employed before, and that's at the University of Idaho, and I believe also maybe Boise. It is something that is used throughout the state, and it is something that this council can do to protect that property, no matter what happens to that institution. And we're all hoping for the best, but what we know historically in the last couple of years is we have to plan for the worst. And so I would like us, I know it's not on the agenda for action, but I would want us to very clearly start a process through Hillary and Sean with planning and zoning to come back to us with the ability to create a university district. We have reached out to the college and asked them to consider this option, and we have not heard back after several requests to speak about it. And so it falls on us as leaders to protect that neighborhood, that institution, and the legacy of NIC.
Yes, Dan.
Yeah, I would just say that somebody tonight gave us this terrific size, jumbo size handouts for the experienced citizens, and I appreciate that. And it's not an action item, but I certainly would also want us to pursue the path of exploring, university district, all that entails. I have the same family history of a lot of us, and one on top of my mind is private property rights, but sounds like that can be blended with protection of the community. So, yeah, I'd like to see that take some action down the road.
Dan?
I was just going to concur, and I agree. And in this case, Dan, this is public property.
Right.
And I
No
think
private property.
A lot of the idea here is to make sure it stays public property and it's used for education. It's a very valuable asset.
So, Mr. Mayor, since it's not an agenda item, we shouldn't probably keep discussing it. Do we need to make a motion to ask staff to bring forward a presentation
I
on?
was going to suggest
Okay.
that we're not really taking action. We're just asking staff to bring forth the possibilities so that we can take action one way or the other on this. And Christy, since you brought this up, if you'd like to make that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would make a motion to request our planning and zoning department to start the process, bring back to council a update to the comp plan that would include the university district, of which we already do have the definition and everything that entails, because our city attorney did that homework for us. And so I'd like to see that when I say action, I would hope that we could maybe have that brought back to us next month.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. I'm not sure we can do it that quickly because it's going to need to go before our planning commission first,
Oh.
correct?
Okay, what's a reasonable time frame?
Impromptu, okay.
Well, we do have, thankfully, as you mentioned, the white paper that our city attorney prepared. I don't know, probably the soonest would be April, I would think, realistically, just because we need to work on something, get it scheduled, go to planning commission, then come forward to city council. So,
Okay,
that's
April
fine.
it is. First meeting in April.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Who did a second?
Dan.
Dan, okay. There were several seconds. Woody?
So does the college have to be involved in this, or is it just us pushing through?
Well, they certainly can provide testimony to the council because there will be a public hearing relative to that.
Because they don't have to carry it, we can carry it.
Right.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Mayor, if I could ask our attorney a question. In anticipation of a reaction to this, what are the city's powers with regards to hypothetically doing a rezone where the other public agency is not in concurrence?
The city has the right to rezone any property that may have consequences, such as a unconstitutional taking without compensation. As I addressed in the white paper, it probably would not apply here, but that doesn't mean it wouldn't be tried.
Thank you.
Seeing no further questions or comments, all those in favor respond with aye.
Aye.
Opposed with nay. Motion carries. Thank you. We next have the oath of office for our council member.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I didn't
So-
dress up.
You have to go down there and,
Oh, we're doing this informally. I worked with the clerk because.
Oh, okay.
Christy requested that she go ahead and stay on the stage.
Yeah.
It's easy for all involved, so we'll
I
do
think
it from this
would be more
perspective.
embarrassing to go down.
Oh, I'm in jeans.
We had to go down.
Don't worry, I'll still have her repeat after me, Mayor. All right, Christy, if you can raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Christy Wood,
I, Christy Wood,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution and laws of the state of Idaho,
the Constitution and laws of the state of Idaho,
and the ordinances of the city of Coeur d'Alene,
and the ordinances of the city of Coeur d'Alene,
that I will faithfully discharge
that I will faithfully discharge
all the duties of the office of council member
all the duties of the office of council member
according to the best of my ability,
according to the best of my ability,
so help me God.
so help me God.
Congratulations.
You missed the
Ted.
cookies, sorry.
There was cake.
Save me.
Cookies and
cookies.
cake.
Well,
We welcome you back
That's
for another
right.
4 years.
yeah, thank you.
Does that make your last vote void?
Yes.
I don't think so. I signed in advance.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move to approve the consent calendar as presented, including Resolution 24004.
Second.
You have a motion second, further discussion? Seeing none, will the clerk take the roll, please?
Gookin,
Yes.
English,
Yes.
Wood,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Miller,
Aye.
McEvers.
Yes.
Motion carries. The next item on the agenda is a reciprocal parking agreement. Sean, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. All right. So as the mayor alluded to, there is a request before council tonight.
It's not up on the screen, Sean.
Oh.
Thank you.
All right, there we go. So there is a request this evening before council to enter into a reciprocal parking agreement for 1717 North 3rd Street. The applicant is here. The decision point is, should council approve this reciprocal parking agreement along 3rd Street to allow for the conversion of existing storage space to professional office use within the structure. And so before I dive in real quick, I just wanted to let council know how parking agreements work, because there are two varieties. And so the first one is a shared use parking agreement, and that's a daytime, nighttime use, and there isn't necessarily any reason to go before council for that reason. And so certain daytime uses such as office space as this, restaurants are generally fall into the nighttime category. We wouldn't be seeing this except for the fact that the Breakfast Nook does breakfast, and so their hours of operation are very similar. And so staff thought it was the best to bring it forward to council to make sure that this was done correctly and we didn't have an hour of operation glitch here. So this is the existing floor plan of the structure that was approved. As you can see, this is the ground floor here. There is some parking out front and a garage along the side. You can see in the rear here that this space was dedicated to storage at the time of construction on both floors. This was a business that did audio-visual installations into homes at the time, and they needed that space to store their gear. The size of the structure was such that they met the minimum parking requirement but had no more opportunity to provide parking on site. Thus, the new occupant has gone in, this is that parking I was just telling you about, has gone into the building and has requested a permit to convert the lower level of the floor here to office space, which requires a parking ratio of 1 stall per 330 square feet rather than 1 per 1,000. I had called the applicant and let him know that staff wouldn't be able to support their parking or their building permit unless they found the parking somewhere, and I provided them those options that I just spoke about for parking. So they reached out to the neighbor across the street here, which is the Breakfast Nook at 719 North 4th Street, and asked them if they could lease some parking. Randy kindly provided some draft language, which the applicant beat to fit, paint to match to get back to us to make sure that it worked legally. And here we are. So as part of that, staff would take a look at the site and make sure that they met the minimum requirement in a reciprocal agreement. You have to have more than what's required by code. In a restaurant environment, you need 1 stall per 200 square feet, and which would require 13 stalls for this restaurant. They have in excess of 40 on the site, so they have plenty to provide. This is the site that needs the extra parking, and as you can see, all their stalls are filled here. There's a car along the side, and there's no car in front of. There possibly is inside of the building, so they do need the parking. So with that, I'd wrap up my staff report and stand for questions. The decision point is, should council approve a reciprocal parking agreement for 1717 North 3rd Street to allow conversion of the existing storage space to professional office use within the structure?
Questions? Woody?
So, Sean, have we done this before? It's not ringing any bells, but my bells have been dim lately.
Yeah, it happens from time to time. It doesn't happen very often. Usually a daytime, nighttime use is the easiest hurdle, as long as they are able to accomplish that with the hours of operation. Our previous mayor had one down the street. They did a conversion from an office space to a mixed-use space, and they had a parking agreement next door that they were already entered into, and there was an agreement. In that case, the mayor had a spot north of the alley that he ended up encumbering to remove himself from that agreement. He ended up providing the parking elsewhere, is what I'm saying. But it does happen.
Thank you.
Kiki?
Thank you. Sean, how far away is this parking space from where the primary property is?
Right. The code says that you measure linearly, so not along the path of where somebody would walk, but directly across the street. The width of the right-of-way is 80 feet.
So this building is on the corner?
Which
The applicant building?
The applicant, it's one in from the corner. There's one to the north. It's mid-block. And right across the street, right up here is the restaurant.
Okay, I was thinking this was the old Navigation building or something like that, and then there was a dog grooming place. And I guess it looked like it was kind of like midway up the block, so I was just wondering if there was some distance parameters there of how far away you could do a reciprocal parking agreement.
It's 400 feet measured as the crow flies.
Okay. And that falls within it?
Yes, it's
Cool.
80 feet away.
Any further yes, Dan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, I'm not a fan of these just because it seems like there's a potential that as this happens again and again and again, that we're running out of parking. And I've got to remind everyone that we have a building coming up downtown that has three stories of commercial that has no parking for employees, no parking for customers. And I've been contacted by the people who have an office in the McEwen Tower just north of us here, and they don't have enough parking for their people. I realize this is downtown, and that's why we've asked staff to look into downtown parking. But it seems like it's a problem citywide, that all of a sudden, if it's like there's not enough parking, we're going to do this. So Woody asked if it's been done elsewhere. How often does this happen, and where's the trigger that happens when all of a sudden there isn't enough parking? I mean, is that when you guys would just say no?
Well, staff certainly would reserve the right to say no. If they cannot meet the minimum standards of code, we would say you'll have to find a different spot within 400 feet. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to convert your office to office space. So there are plenty of times when staff has said, well, you're trying to fit 10 gallons into a 5-gallon bucket, and you got to find that 5 gallons somewhere else to park in. Otherwise, the answer is no.
What about street parking?
Street parking, it depends on if there is street parking, and it is certainly available to anyone, first come, first serve, but they cannot claim the street parking as their own. It's available to everybody. It's taxpayers.
So they need established parking spaces in order to occupy the building according to our code. And another reason I brought this up was because, so the Breakfast Nook, I mean, according to our code, it has enough parking spaces. But our code has some stuff in it where I think personally that there's not enough parking spaces. You know, it should be cars per bedroom, and I don't think we do it that way. And in this case, I just happened to eat lunch at the Breakfast Nook a couple of weeks ago, and I had to park on the street because their parking lot was full. So what happens in this situation when the Breakfast Nook, which is open for breakfast at, 6 or 7 in the morning, and this business is going to have its employees showing up at 8 or 9 o'clock, and this parking lot is full?
So, I mean, and that's a real-world scenario right there. I mean, that doesn't meet the standards of what's on paper, obviously. So, they would find a spot as close as they possibly could, most likely on the street, but the Breakfast Nook is supposed to have those spaces available to them. There's nothing in our code that says it has to be marked or signed such that it is specifically for the other business. It's shared. It's basically a campus. 4 of the stalls are on someone else's property. To go a little bit further, and where I think you're trending with this is, if there's a change of ownership or something like that, what happens then? And so council has to undo or unwind this agreement if they want out of it, and they have to provide the parking somewhere else within 400 feet. Otherwise, the Breakfast Nook site would need to provide it for whatever they redeveloped to or whatever they became as a different business.
Do we know if there's any other parking agreements for this property already?
I am not aware of any for this specific property.
Okay, because isn't this where, like, just south of here, there's that church that's coming in where there used to be a car dealer's?
There's a new church there, yes.
Do they have parking agreements with anyone? I mean, I know that's probably an example of something where on Sunday, yes, it's going to be packed, but the rest of the time, it's not going to be.
Hillary has I'll call it famous at this point, but it's like trying to design church around Easter Sunday for parking. You don't want to do that because you end up with a huge parking lot that sits empty most of the time. But in this case, they did provide the minimum requirement for a church. Church requires 1 stall per 10 seats in the largest worship hall, plus any school that they may do that's above and beyond Sunday school.
That actually wasn't my question. It was like, why couldn't they just deal with the church? If the church is going to only be busy on Sunday, then
they
have their parking
could have.
spaces. Oh, I think someone raised their hand back there. Maybe there's an answer.
Hold on just a second. You need to approach. Do you mind?
I welcome it.
I appreciate your time. Phil Billingsley, I'm one of the owners of Surreal Trust and Elias Research. We occupy the building. We're currently running the business there as is with the same number of employees. But yes, you're right. The church parking lot was put in probably in the last month, I think.
Yeah.
And we had the agreement with Paul at the Breakfast Nook prior to that, before it was finished, because of this permit that we had to do this construction. We couldn't move forward with that construction without having a reciprocal parking agreement. Hindsight's always 2020. The church is empty Monday through Friday. We are only there Monday through Friday, and that's only the employees that are there. We're a business that's virtual. We don't have a schedule, so we don't have a time where people have to show up at work. There's days where there's 6 people there. There's days where there's 10. It's a kind of a very loose operation in that way. But I can assure you, in the 13 years that we've been around, and 7 here in Coeur d'Alene, I think, 10 in Coeur d'Alene, we've never had a person had to go home because they couldn't find parking along the side streets, which is where they actually prefer to park.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't require they cross Third. But again, having it available is important for the construction to move forward. But yeah, having an agreement with the church now would be outstanding. It is literally empty Monday through Friday. There's nobody parking in it. And it's a big lot, too.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So Sean, I'm, actually, if I could. So Sean, I guess, so my concern is always that, parking is a premium, and I don't want anyone to be shied away from a business because there's not enough parking. Can they come back in the future and renegotiate this if all of a sudden there is a problem with a Breakfast Nook and Breakfast Nook starts getting pushed back and says, oh my God, we're really popular? Could they come back and redo it with the church?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Code
Okay.
actually specifically requires that council.
Because I think that's more in theme of what the code is trying to do, is to find that, like you said, that non-use thing. If the Breakfast Nook was a diner that was only open at night, for example, then that would make more sense to me. But the church, it seems like, yeah, they have their required parking spaces, but it's not going to be busy the same time this business is.
Right. And there's nothing that staff or council can do to force anybody to go into
Right.
that agreement. But so I wanted to clarify, if this was to change, it would have to come back before council to get it undone. And then if they find a daytime, nighttime use, it wouldn't come back to council. It would just be done administratively.
Well,
because of hours.
I'm happy there's a safety valve that changes my observation on the whole thing. I'm glad that they have an opportunity in case there is a conflict there to continue.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, good questions, Councilman. What'd you have for breakfast?
Omelet.
Okay, I hear the food's really good. So what I read was that Breakfast Nook actually has more than required spaces right now.
Correct.
And so what I like about this is businesses are working together, and we want to do everything we can to support local business. So I'm comfortable with it. You certainly clarified a lot of things that could have been concerning, and so I think it's a win-win for everybody.
Perfect.
I'd like to share a different perspective, and setting aside downtown parking. One of my concerns, and it has to do with stormwater runoff, particularly in a lot of our community where we don't have swales on site to catch that. Sometimes we require so much parking and it's all this impervious surface that then drains to the street, that then wants to drain down to the lake. And I think, as much as possible, and that's why I support these kinds of agreements, if we can avoid making more impervious surfaces as is necessary, I think we ought to do so. It just is kind of an environmental safeguard for our community, and also less of a cost for the city to manage that stormwater. So if we can do this, a good example is right down the street where Runge's is. They've got a parking lot that's 4 times the size of what they need. And if 3/4 of that were in grass, they could manage all the storm runoff from their roof as well as their parking service right there on site. So we ought to encourage these kinds of agreements, and I understand downtown's a different issue, but otherwise, I think we should encourage these kind of agreements. And I'm going to ask the clerk to take, or no, I need a motion first.
Mr. Mayor, I had a question if I could.
Oh, sure, I'm sorry.
That's okay. So these numbers, I don't think I've been aware of this one parking place for 10 seats in a church, 200 square feet per parking spot for a restaurant, 330 square feet for an office. When was the last time those numbers have been talked about or even thought about?
I believe that was 2009. Don't quote me on that, but we did reduce our parking standards by quite a bit back then. I remember that retail used to be 1 per 240, restaurant was 1 per 100, so we are now half the requirement that we used to be for a restaurant. You know, this is something that we discuss quite a bit internally in the planning department, and it's very difficult to design a parking lot around popularity. And so when you look at a restaurant, one restaurant may drive 1 per 200, and one, you know, they blow the doors out and there's people there parking across the street, and you know, it's first come, first serve, and they're there early sitting and waiting for a seat. And so it's very difficult to try and right size an ordinance based on something as fickle as popularity.
Gotcha. So that change was throughout the city, not just downtown.
Yeah, it was
Downtown
through the
has a
whole city.
different formula.
Yes. Yeah, residential and non-residential.
Okay, thank you.
What action would council like to take?
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 24-005, approval of reciprocal parking agreement for 1717 North 3rd Street to allow conversion of existing storage space to professional office use within the structure.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for the discussion. Dan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just, so I'm in favor of this, but I got to caution council that if we start seeing more and more of these, then we have a parking issue. And one thing I don't want to see is someone afraid to go to a business because they don't think there's any place to park.
And Mr. Mayor, I would also echo that we had some issues with neighborhoods who had overflow parking in front of them. And so I think I'm in support of this one because there's two options here. And a business can work with their staff to say, you know, if the breakfast nook doesn't work out, we have the church. But I do think you're right. We have to be cautious to not push commercial parking into residential neighborhoods too.
Seeing no further questions, will the clerk take the roll, please?
English?
Yes.
Wood?
Yes.
Evans?
Yes.
Miller?
Aye.
McEvers?
Yes.
Gookin?
Yes.
Next item up is a change order for our wastewater solids building, and Mike Becker is here to present that information. Welcome, Mike.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council. On a side note, Breakfast Nook does have really good food. I'm here to talk about what happens after we eat the food.
Okay.
Okay.
And people are leaving
He's so
because
good.
of it.
Oh, come on.
They're all leaving, yeah.
How distasteful, Mike.
So, good evening, and wastewater department is here tonight requesting approval of change order number 1 for the solids building improvement contract. Presently, we have 2 large projects going on. The solids building improvements is the one along the trail. We're going to be installing a new centrifuge which dewaters our biosolids, and a building addition which will help reduce the odors on that side of the treatment plant. And we have some other projects that we're doing that are in conformance with our facility plan. As you may recall, and in an effort to keep both council and the public informed, wastewater will be presenting our change orders as the project progresses, rather than waiting to the very end of the project. So, change order number 1 comprises of 4 change proposal requests, what we call CPRs. CPRs are directives to proceed with work with approval to change in contract time and contract price. As shown on this slide, CPR number 1 is for building modifications in our control room. This was to accommodate a much larger control panel and apply safety provisions in that control room. These modifications could not be addressed by our consulting engineer, as this panel was not fabricated at the time this project went out to bid. Now, we'll be showing a slide later in this presentation that shows this control panel in that room. Another example here is CPR number 2, which is the replacement of our caustic line. We presently have a caustic line, and we discovered that it was leaking. And this CPR was for the replacement of that leaking caustic line. This was discovered after these plans had already gone out to bid and was awarded to the contractor. And then CPR number 3 here is the hot water line replacement. As you may recall, our hot water loop provides heat to several of our buildings as well as our digesters. This was the last remaining piece of the hot water loop pipe that we did not replace several years ago. We were waiting for the project that was currently under construction at the treatment operations building. So these 4 change orders, as shown here, total for $224,305.92. So where are we financially? Well, this slide shows our project breakdown. We originally started out with a contractor bid of $5.4 million. With this change order, our total comes to $5,666,208.92. Our multi-year budget for this project was $6,450,000. So we're still plenty way below that amount. Now, as I previously mentioned, this slide shows some of the progress of this project. On the right is our control panel. We had 1.5 inches to spare inside that room with this control panel. But you can see up here at the top, this control panel is taller than this door. That's a standard doorway. We had no way of actually getting the panel in there. And we would have probably addressed this had this panel been fabricated during design. It was not. So what did we do? We added this double doorway with a removable window topper to it that will allow us to bring in that control panel, but it will also allow us to remove it or any other equipment that needs an oversized access. I'm sorry. On the left is our new centrifuge. It fit through our skylight. We have skylights over there, but not for looking up at the stars. We actually use them to lower large pieces of equipment with a crane. This centrifuge had to be dismantled in 3 pieces to get it to fit inside the building. So, where am I? This centrifuge will be primarily used as our primary centrifuge for dewatering. Our existing one will be used as a backup or a redundant centrifuge. We believe this should be up and running by the end of February, first part of March. And with that, staff's recommendations are that we would like council to approve change order number 1 for the solids building improvements contract with Apollo Inc. in the amount of $224,305.92. And with that, I will gladly answer any questions.
Woody?
So I missed you at the last meeting when you did this. The building is new or it's old?
That building is old. We are adding on to the building. It will be completely enclosed, so we'll be able to control the odors a little bit better on that side of the plant.
So that's why all the modifications to the building. When was that building originally built, do you know? It's historical, right?
Multiple years.
Okay. No, I think it's great that you guys figured out ways to get around it. I think I love that part of what, besides the smell going away, that's what I love about you guys figuring out how to make things work. And I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Christie?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mike, when you gave the presentation to General Services, one of the things we talked about was why now and why not have it already in the plan, and you answered some of that tonight. But what you said at the time was, after the fact, without the construction crews on scene, the cost goes way up.
Yes, and following the state statute and our quoting and bidding rules, we would have to solicit contractor quotes, or in this case, some of these prices may warrant an actual bid, where we have a contractor on site and we're able to capitalize on the cost savings of not paying for mobilization. They already have some equipment already there that they can use, and materials and labor force. Being that this project will be going through the winter time, there will be a downtime where the contractor can still employ some of the workers and workforce to address some of these other issues.
Good strategy. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move, if I could, to approve Resolution 24006, approval of the change order number 1 to the Solids Building Improvements contract with Apollo for the amount of $224,305.92 thousand dollars.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Do you have another?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Thanks, Mike. Will the clerk take the roll, please?
Wood,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Miller,
Aye.
McEvers,
Yes.
Gookin.
Yep.
English.
Yes.
Next, we have a motion regarding historic preservation. Welcome, Hillary.
Great, thank you, Mayor. So this evening, I am before you with a request from the city's Historic Preservation Commission and staff to seek your approval to allow us to apply for a grant from the State Historic Preservation Office. As you recall, the city formed the Historic Preservation Commission and adopted the Historic Preservation Code in 2019, and our Historic Preservation Plan was adopted in 2021. When we became a Historic Preservation Commission, we also applied to become a certified local government, which makes us eligible to apply for these grant funds from the state. Our State Historic Preservation Office, or SHPO, receives the funds from the National Park Service. They're from oil lease funds, and so they have this year about $100,000 available in grants, and so this is the grant cycle. And so I'm here before you this evening to ask for your approval. If it'll let me skip to the next slide. If not, I can just walk you through it. Let's see if I can get it to reboot. Apologize for that little glitch. Sorry. Oh, you're good. Yeah, it's Mike Becker's fault. Just kidding. So the request before you is to apply for the grant funds, and we're looking at a range of dollar amounts. And the reason for this is we're not sure how much funding will be available. And so kind of talked to the Historic Preservation Commission as well as our SHPO representative, and they suggested that maybe if we ask for a range, that would allow them to award us one of the dollar amounts or something in between the $9,000 and the $15,000, and that would just be for consultant's fee, to clarify. And the request is for a consultant to do a survey, a reconnaissance survey of the properties in the downtown, and I'll show you 2 map boundaries that correspond with the dollar amounts. So a little bit of background for the grant cycle right now. It's due at the end of January, and they have a number of goals each year associated with their CLG grants. And so the first goal actually is for doing survey work, which is exactly what we're requesting, so that's in line with that. The Historic Preservation Plan that Council adopted in 2021 actually has several references to the downtown, and having that as a priority action item to do reconnaissance survey work of the downtown, as well as work with our downtown association to identify our historic properties and to work with the stakeholders on that. As you're very well aware, the downtown has some of our most significant properties dating back to the late 1800s, and several other properties within the boundaries are already on the National Register of Historic Places. There's also a concern that as the city's downtown continues to develop, that there might be more development pressures and concern with either the loss of historic resources or some redevelopment that might degrade some of the historic character in the downtown. And as noted on the last bullet point, and I'll show you on the 2 maps, the smaller boundary that would be that $9,000 cost estimate is about 50 buildings, and then the larger boundary is about 110 buildings, and that would be the $15,000 cost estimate. So here are the 2 map boundaries. So very similar on the west side, they would both start at 1st Street and go to 6th Street, and then from the south, it would be Front Avenue up to we would have Lakeside for the smaller boundary, and then up to Indiana for the larger boundary. Or if SHPA were to award us some dollar amount in the middle, then we could kind of identify if maybe there's a different boundary, maybe Coeur d'Alene Avenue, or identifying some of the other buildings that we really would like to evaluate. So fiscal impact, as noted, that we're asking for that dollar amount. There's a 1-to-1 match requirement, but that can be in-kind contributions, and we've been able to successfully do that with the other 2 grants we've received. This would be our 3rd request. And so as noted in the staff report, the only actual tangible dollar amount we would be proposing would be a $500 cash match, and that would be for printing and other deliverables such as that. The rest would all be met with staff and in-kind volunteer work from our Historic Preservation Commission. As noted, it's the end of the month is the grant submittal, so it's very timely coming before you this evening. And our decision point recommendation is asking the City Council to authorize us to work with our Historic Preservation Commission to submit the grant application. And I'd be happy to stand for questions. And we also have our chairman, Walter Burns, who's the chair of our Historic Preservation Commission here, if you have any questions for him.
Woody.
What is a reconnaissance survey? What do you come away with? What is the goal of the survey? Sorry.
It identifies the nature of the building. So it's really a detailed look at the building. So what we did for the Garden District, for example, the Garden District was looked at by the county's Historic Preservation Commission before we formed one, and they used a consultant to evaluate all the properties in the downtown, in the Garden District. And you come away with like a little sheet that has information on every single property, description of the architectural features. They try and do research to figure out the age of the building. Is it on the National Register of Historic Places? Are there any historical significant events for that property? So it's really just a great archive for us to figure out what are the conditions, what are the buildings, and then have all that information available so that we could most likely do something at the local level if we wanted to form a downtown historic district or do something with that.
So that doesn't limit anybody doing anything with
Does
the
not.
building at this point?
Correct.
This is
It's
the
just
survey
informational.
Collecting the information.
Correct.
And it does find out the age.
It does, yep, as much as that's feasible, and then has photography too, which is really important for Historic Preservation Commission to identify, even if the building is demolished in the future, to have some kind of photographic evidence as well as the history.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Seeing no further questions, I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'd move to approve Resolution 24007, authorizing staff and the Historic Preservation Commission to apply for and accept, if awarded, a certified local government grant funds for consultant assistant to conduct holy mackerel historic survey of downtown properties in the amount of between $9,000 and $15,000.
Second.
You have a motion second. Further discussion on the motion. Yes, Kiki.
Just one thing, I'd take this opportunity. I've been working with trying to track down any old-timers who might have remembered a thing, I think they called them Volkswalks or Volks Marches. The Hudson family was very involved, a lot of other folks were, and I know that what they did is they took kind of like a tour through town, and they had maps that had photos of some of the houses and descriptions of some of the houses. And in fact, I think there was just a column in the press not too long ago talking about that. So if anyone picks up on this and they know of anyone who might have one of those old maps, that would be really helpful material for tracking the history that they had then. So just taking a public service announcement to move that along.
Good one.
Will clerk take the roll, please?
Evans?
Yes.
Miller?
Aye.
McEvers?
Yes.
Gookin?
Yep.
English?
Yes.
Wood?
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you. And now we move on to adoption of the capital improvement plan for parks, transportation, police, and fire. And we have first a staff report. Sean, you're going to open that, and then
Yes.
Melissa. Welcome back, Sean.
All right, thank you. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Tonight, our consultants and staff are here to present the outcomes achieved as a result of following the guidance you provided concerning our city's future growth. The last meeting was held on January 2nd, In response to the council's directive, staff diligently undertook a comprehensive review of the CIP, its associated impact fee study, and the pertinent fees. We've engaged with stakeholders to gather their insights. Tonight's presentation not only incorporates their valuable comments, but also aims to provide council with a well-rounded understanding of the proposed plan to address new growth. The projects and associated costs outlined in the CIP, identified by various departments, are crucial for the next decade to uphold the level of service for police, fire, parks, transportation, ensuring the future of Coeur d'Alene citizens. So this process, which is often referred to as the growth share, is a crucial step in enhancing our city's infrastructure to meet the demands of new development. So tonight, we seek the council's endorsement to adopt the CIP, the report, and to set the schedule of fees and timing for the development impact and annexation fees, paving the way for the city's growth, pun intended. Sorry, I caught that. Additionally, we will present this feedback obtained from the stakeholders, adding some suggestions for your consideration. To guide us through these details tonight as a multi-part hearing and resolution, I would like to introduce Melissa Cleveland from Welsh Comer. Please note that we have placed the presentations back to back with question slides to allow for discussion as needed and to denote where the three overarching considerations are. Thank you for your attention, and without further ado, Melissa, the podium's yours.
Good evening and welcome, Melissa.
All right, thank you. And I also have Todd Chase from FCS Group here tonight, so he'll be coming up for the second part of this. So like Sean was saying, tonight council will consider kind of three separate parts to this. The first is adopting the impact fee CIPs, and we've been going over those for several different meetings. And then the second part will be adopting the impact and annexation fee report, which we've been revising based on comments from you the last few meetings as well. And then adopting the development impact and annexation fee schedule, the actual fees. If you remember, the charges listed in the report are the maximum defensible fees. And so there's some options for an actual fee schedule provided as well. So this first part will be that number one, looking at the capital improvement plans. This hasn't changed since you were updated on the 2nd. I'm just going to fly through these legal requirements. They're here. We've gone through them several times, so they're here if we need them, but I think you're pretty comfortable with it at this point. Here are all the workshops and meetings to date as well. In addition to this, we met with several developers that we had received comments from between the last few meetings. So we met with them last week. So that's in addition to what's on this slide. So the CIP development, you've seen this before. How were the projects and costs determined? The projects and costs were in various city master plans and also in KMPO's master plans with respect to transportation. And we also vetted the project need using KMPO's various models, the 2030 and the 2040 models. And then the building costs came from regional police and fire station construction. Some transportation costs already had detailed estimates from other studies, and then some were provided by us, an engineering firm. And then also city staff knowledge of certain elements and how much they cost.
Mr. Mayor, are we able to ask as we go along or try to come back to it?
You know, I think there's more value, if you don't mind, in interrupting you and asking the questions as we go.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Melissa, on that subject of how it was developed, you've probably heard this, I've certainly heard this from interested parties, that how is this not a wish list when you look at master plans? And
Right.
we kind of know what goes into development of that, but if you could speak to the over idea of some of this being a wish list.
Sure, that's a good question. Yeah, so that's why we did in the appendix of the report, there's needs assessments for the fire and police, because they didn't have much of a CIP before we started with this. So we worked on what's needed to handle growth. So we looked at population projections, what they had today. We looked at staff per thousand citizens and that kind of thing. So the CIPs are based on what's needed to keep up with growth. And then for transportation, we have the opportunity of having that regional demand model from KMPO. So we can look at what they're projecting based on population and employment growth projections in various areas and how different roadways and intersections are going to function in the future. So it's a combination of staff knowledge of their system and then those tools that we have. And so sometimes staff would say, I think we need a signal at some intersection. I can't remember now because we've gone through so many iterations. And we would use the models and really vet if that was necessary or not. And sometimes we'd pull some things out. But that's how it's not necessarily a wish list. It's actually what's needed to keep up with growth for the next 10 years. These are intended to be a 10-year plan.
So you're saying it's vetted?
It's vetted.
Mr. Mayor?
Lots of iterations with staff.
Woody?
Yeah, while you're on that subject of KMPO master plans looking forward, do you ever look at the master plans looking back and see if they're pretty accurate on what they're projecting, what the wish, I didn't mean the wish list, but do they line up, or is it, you follow?
We didn't, as a part of this project, go in the rears. I'm assuming KMPO staff is constantly evaluating that. They update their model often, and they take traffic counts and things like that to make sure that it's as validated as it can be. It's still a tool. I mean, you don't blindly use it. It's still a tool that you use for guidance.
So history shows if they're on the right track, is my perspective on it. You can go back 20 years here pretty easily. KMPO's been around for that, so they don't necessarily look at it that way. How are we doing? Are we hitting the right numbers? Are we projecting the right things? Okay, thank you.
Okay, continue. Okay, so we went over this before, that we, since November, we did go back and look at the park CIP, and there were some items that were included in the BLM parks, the one at Harbor Center and La Crosse that we were able to remove. And then we also looked at the level of service. This was all based on what you guys wanted, and reduced that. And so we were able to say that 5 acres of parkland is probably all that's really necessary in the next 10 years. So that reduced things pretty significantly. The transportation CIP has not changed much. We did remove, we had reduced it to just planning the Julia Street overpass, but then we took that out altogether based on your feedback. So there are several different projects in the CIP for transportation. This is a map that we made so you could see where the transportation and parks projects were, since they're all over the city. And then the fire CIP.
I'm sorry, Melissa.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Kiki was first, and then I had something.
Okay, sorry, I'm just rolling along.
I just was questioning on that parks plan. I know that we had I think we all had a little bit of a sticker shock on the parks program when we first saw it, but I didn't see that we had a consensus to reduce by 50% the acquired land for future parks. Did we all put that forward? Or was that what you your interpretation was?
I don't know that there was ever a time where I necessarily had consensus as we worked through this. That was the sense, and we went back and we looked at the level of service, Bill Greenwood and his staff primarily, and looking at, though the master plan looked at 5 acres per thousand, they're really at more of like a 4.2 today, and then like a 4 might be more maintainable for them. I know that was kind of the discussion, is not overshooting what they can effectively maintain, because impact fees don't pay for maintenance.
And is part of the discussion the fact that if you could buy 5 acres for 1.2 right now, in 10 years, can you buy 5 acres for 1.2, and will there be 5 acres available? So I'm wondering if this is under planning for that acquisition line item, is my line of thought there.
So if there's an opportunity that comes up, remember that you can amend the CIP if you need to. So this is just the best kind of guess of what's needed right now without maybe overshooting that acquisition mark. But if you were to have some amazing opportunity that was more than 5 acres, you could have a council action to amend this CIP.
Thank you.
Christie?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question was on the transportation.
Okay.
Projects. And there's a lot of them.
There are a lot of them.
One that caught my eye was just an example of the roundabout at 4th and Dalton. Now, there's a roundabout that's planned.
4th and Dalton, is that what
Yeah.
you said? Yes.
My question is, what about the city of Dalton?
Mhm.
What is the responsibility there to share some of those costs?
That fee or that cost in here is just the portion that's within the city of the Coeur d'Alene.
Okay, so when we do move forward, I guess I should be asking the streets guy.
Which I think they're.
When we
may
do
still
move
be here.
forward, then we would be working with Dalton for their fair
Exactly,
share.
for their share. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Just like you would on some other project that's, 2/3 in your city and 1/3 in another city or something like that. Yep. Okay, so fire, this hasn't changed since you've seen it last. This is, I don't know if we even need to really talk about it. This changed since Councilwoman Wood saw it last. What we did is we looked at the substation in a slightly different way to be able to increase gross share, and we, having guidance from council that maybe it wasn't specifically supposed to be downtown, we took that out of the report. So it's a substation, it's 37% growth eligible, and it's somewhere in the city. So that's the change that we made. So on the CIPs themselves, I know I went through that quickly, but it is the same as what we saw in the second, so there's a kind of a lot to get through. So are there any questions, any more questions on this?
I think you did it well.
Okay.
Handling those as we went along.
Okay, perfect. So we'll move on to the next one. Todd Chase from FCS is going to handle some of the slides in this section, so I'll let him come up. But of the 3 steps we're kind of walking through tonight, this is going to be the second one, and that's the development impact and annexation fee report. Yeah, I've just been pushing that, yeah.
Well, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, council members, for allowing us to present tonight. We've been working hard with staff and stakeholders over the last several months, I feel like, on this project, so we feel like we're really getting there. One of the reasons why we're doing this work is because it hasn't been looked at for about 20 years here in Coeur d'Alene. And as you know, cities change quite a bit over time. And this is an opportunity to look in the future, another 10 in this work, and try to be proactive. Impact fees are a way to be proactive in terms of trying to allow development to pay for its impact on your local systems. Without development impact fees, you basically have to ask citizens to approve bonds, or you have to have rates that recover that through utility fees, or you lower your level of service over time. So you don't have many options, but impact fees are a good option, and I really appreciate you being proactive in this. The other thing we're talking about tonight is the annexation fee, which it's been even longer than the impact fees since that's been updated. So we have information before you tonight to look at a new both impact fee as well as annexation fee, 2 separate things. We will talk about the methodology and some alternatives. You'll have some decisions to make about those alternatives tonight, and hopefully direction to staff and us to take this from draft to final. But we feel like we're really close. we're going to be talking about what we consider to be a maximum defensible fee. We justify that through this methodology report that you have, and councils then have the opportunity to phase this in over time. And as long as you don't exceed the maximum defensible fee, you don't have to go through this whole process again, like we're doing right now with all the meetings, stakeholder input, and all that. So it's very important to understand that it's the maximum defensible fee we're talking about. As Melissa mentioned, we have a set of capital improvement programs that go with this maximum defensible fee. You can change that list at any time, and as long as we don't increase the fee beyond the maximum defensible amount escalated for inflation, I think you're in good footing. With regard to parks, since we did this analysis a few months ago, you can see we updated some of the growth assumptions here, primarily relating to overnight visitors. You have a number of hotel projects that are planned in the city. Staff is very confident that those are going to move forward. And so we've updated the change in overnight visitation in the city for the next 10 years. That resulted in a slightly higher growth share percentage for parks. It went up from 18.3% to 19.7%. Slight increase, really, but when you're talking about millions of dollars of projects, it makes a difference in the overall analysis. So that was one important change. And so when we calculated the parks fee, the two decisions tonight are, do you charge it, the parks with non-residential customers, or just residential customers, like you do today? Today, you only charge park impact fees to basically housing, multifamily and single-family housing. Nothing else pays it. So the scenario on the left, we call scenario A. Parks charge with both res and non-res customers. On the right is scenario B. Parks impact fee with just residential customers, like you do today. And the bottom line is a charge per customer that ranges from $535.40 for scenario A, and it goes up, if you don't charge the non-residential customers, to $620.46, because now the residential growth is going to pick up all the parks cost. It's not going to be distributed among non-res and res.
I had a quick question
Sure.
on that. Well, there actually is another scenario where council could increase fees for parking or such. We don't necessarily have to put all of this impact fee entirely on residential. There are other ways to bring in revenue. So I'm curious how you got to that where it's set in stone.
Well, with the impact fee, based on the gross share percentages and the type of parks in the capital improvement program, the impact fees would recover about 82% of the total cost of the parks. So we are hoping that there's another funding source out there, whether it be through hotel lodging bed tax revenue or other general funds or grants, that'll pick up that other share.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. I wish it would pick up 100%, but it just doesn't. And you're right, there are other funding techniques and resources the city can use. So you'll see when we apply that fee per customer to the different customer types, how that translates into a fee per home or per square foot or per dwelling unit or assisted living unit, however we want to charge it. With regard to transportation, based on the capital improvement program that was presented by Melissa, you had a total cost of about $88.2 million in capital projects. Only about $30.7 million would be recovered through impact fees. It's about 34%, or 34.8 to be exact, through impact fees. So once again, we are banking on the fact that there would be other funding sources coming forward to help finish some of these projects. Grants, perhaps cost sharing with developers, if it's a new roadway, or other cities if they're participating. So, with that cost recovery of $30.7 million, we then divide that, or we add or subtract the fund balance, and we're then have a cost basis that's $27.88 million. Divide that by the projected growth in PM peak hour vehicle trips over the next 10 years using the KMPO models, and we get a cost per PM vehicle trip of $3,166. Some of that's for just roadways, some of it's for bike and ped improvements, but the total cost is $3,166, and then we add in the admin fee, and the total per dwelling unit would be about $3,324 per dwelling unit on average, or per PM peak hour trip. That's how the math works with transportation. Any questions on that? No?
Just a comment that now's when it really would be helpful, what Woody brought up, to see historically. If we really did, we're projecting 88 million over the next 10 years, the historical information would be very good right now of what did we do the last 10 years, what was projected, and I don't know if our staff can answer any of that, probably not off the top of their heads, but it would be helpful to have that.
Yeah. With respect to the police capital improvement program, the total cost was $6.67 million for the three main improvements. About 72.6% would be recovered by impact fees based on the growth share percentages. And that would give us a cost basis after you deduct your current fund balance of $4.39 million for police. And then we divide that by the change in customer units to get a cost per customer unit. We'll talk about the customer units in a minute. With fire, all of the capital improvement program elements are needed to address the growth that's expected to occur to maintain the current level of service in the city. And so all of the fire costs could be recovered through impact fees. And then we deduct the fund balance, so we have a cost basis of about $8.4 million for that.
Excuse me, a quick question on fire, if I could.
Mm-hmm.
So with technology changing, again, kind of going back the 26 years since we've done this, does that weigh into any of that sprinklers, less many fires, or is it the fire department as they do ambulance work and all the medical things they're going for? Is that taken into consideration when you do those projections?
Maybe not directly, because these growth share percentages are based on equipment per capita today, buildings per capita, square feet today. And as you become more efficient and you need less space in the future to address the 13,000 additional residents that are projected over the next 10 years, then yes, if the fire department's being more efficient in their forecast, then yes, we would have a lower fee per capita than we would have justified 10 years ago. But then the costs of construction go up, the cost of materials go up, and so it's just all these moving parts.
Thank you.
When we do calculate these fees by customer unit, this is where I feel like the city's being really kind of, cutting edge with your impact fee methodology. A lot of cities just have one fee per dwelling unit without justification or without consideration of the size of the dwelling unit, or really the many types of dwelling units. In this case, with staff's help, we've managed to come up with additional categories for Coeur d'Alene that makes sense in terms of what you're seeing over the planning counter. So we have a single-family dwelling unit fee based on a square foot of heated floor area. And you can see there's a fee for parks, 61 cents per square foot, fire, 47 cents, roughly, police, 25 cents, transportation, $1.43. The total adds up to about $2.77 per square foot, or, for the average dwelling unit, that would be about $6,431. So we have recommended that you can charge this fee per square foot for single-family homes. And that way, a small home, maybe a more affordable home, would pay less than a larger estate home. And with multifamily, you could do the fee per square feet, or you could do it per new dwelling, just per dwelling unit. And so you have an option there of charging it either way. With assisted living, same thing.
Excuse me, I have a quick question on the
Sure.
multifamily. When you, we certainly do have the option, but I guess I want to hear some of the discussion on that, because clearly a unit that is 900 square feet or a unit that is a three-bedroom, maybe 1,500 square feet with much more impact, they're different. So why would there be discussion on charging per unit?
Well, the interesting thing about this is that the census data reports that you have more people per multifamily home here than you do per single-family home on average. So you have more people living in smaller units. And so their impact on the system is actually equal to, not greater, than the single-family units, statistically. If you're in an apartment, you might be more inclined to go use a park than if you have a backyard, for example, and you happen to have more kids there. And it could just be the nature of the age of the families in apartments, and it could be I've seen it in many communities, especially resort communities, all the time. So it's hard to just assume that, apartments impact systems less than detached homes.
Because I'm talking apartment to apartment. So you have a one-bedroom apartment, one person lives in it, or you have a three-bedroom apartment with a family, but they're assessed at the same, unless you do square footage.
In that case, yes. Yeah.
So I'm just curious why the discussion would be that those units would be equal.
Well, we have an average that you could use. It's perfectly fine to assume that all apartments, it's just easier for staff to calculate. It's easier for developers to use their pro formas if they know it's going to be $3,000 per unit, or as opposed to, $4.67 per square foot.
I understand it's easier. I guess I'm looking for a level of fairness, and so we can get back to that.
Yeah.
I have just a little
Sure.
bit. We, when we met with a few of the developers last week, we did run a few examples of multifamily projects that had been permitted within the last couple of years, and the multifamily was just really similar if you ran it by the dwelling unit or the square foot. So
When you say really similar, like the dollar amounts were exact?
very close. I mean, I think it just depends on the unit if it's higher or lower. But we did look at that, and so I mean, you're welcome to make the choice. I mean, that's why the choice is in front of you. But I don't think it varies much.
If it doesn't vary that much, then in the interest of fairness, I'd be more interested in the square footage.
Well, that'll be good to know as we move forward. You can see we have other categories here. Similar discussion with assisted living. We've calculated both per square foot and per unit, per assisted living unit. Again, they're both, we assume they're revenue neutral. You both give you the same amount of revenue, whether you charge it one way or the other. And then when we get into the different types of non-residential development, this is scenario A, so there is a charge for parks. You can see we've kept it pretty consistent with the non-residential charges for everything other than transportation, just because we don't have a really good database of the number of employees based on all the different types of commercial, all the different types of industrial. So we just don't have that good data. And so we have to use what we are confident in, which is a general average of a fee per square foot for all non-residential development, which is similar to kind of what you do today.
Mr. Mayor, I missed the last meeting, and I promise not to dominate any much longer. So what you're really talking about, too, includes the hotels.
Hotels are further down. Yeah, we have a fee for a large, one of the meetings we had, it was recommended that we consider large hotels separately from small boutique hotels and bed and breakfasts differently. So we have different basis for calculating those two. We broke it at 50 rooms. So hotels with over 50 rooms per building has one fee, and then the smaller hotels has a separate fee. And these are also, we've calculated both a fee per square foot and a fee per room.
Okay, on that note, some of the feedback we've heard that came to council in the past was that there could be, hotels prefer the unit rather than square foot, because a square foot could be a storage area, and it has no impact. So I'm curious what the discussion is on that.
These fees are based on the room, basically the rooms, not the unheated storage areas or the parking areas. These are fees based on the actual rooms built by the hotelier.
But some rooms are bigger,
Right.
some are
They'd have-
smaller.
again,
It's just the reverse.
I would recommend the charging based on rooms, because it's a lot, I think it's simpler, it's going to be revenue neutral. I think it's, in that case. Yeah.
Speak for just a second. So, just want to hop in here because we seem to be getting around the issue but not getting to it. And so the reason why staff, when we have this discussion, both of those options are available to council, and ultimately we'll go with whatever you wise council people decide. But ultimately where the discussion landed was, so if you have a large apartment complex, let's say, 300 units or something like that, then you start running into areas where, okay, they're going to provide a barbecue area that may be for everybody, or some sort of other gathering place. And we thought that, well, it'll limit them from providing those types of amenities for the people that live there if we're charging by heated square footage. Also, we would have arguments over circulation. Does the hallway count or not? Does the elevator count? Does the stairway count? Does the mechanical count? Are you measuring to the inside of the drywall or the outside of the wall? And so it. And the developers ultimately agreed is that the cost per unit would make more sense for them and us to review. We would have less conflict, I guess, at that area. One of the things that you bring up, which is a really a good observation, is that what about the small units versus the large units? And so I've reviewed thousands of apartments over my career, and it's very rare that you have someone come forward that just built one building that's very small units. And it happens, but it doesn't happen that often. Usually there's a blend of. So you'll run into, about, if I had to make my best guess, around half or so, maybe a little bit, a third to a half are going to be one bedroom. Another third or to a half close there is going to be 2 bedrooms, and then there's a couple of 3 bedrooms, if there's 3 bedrooms at all. Because at some point, there's a diminishing return where a 3-bedroom apartment's going to cost close to what a house is going to cost, and then they'll just buy the house. And so they do provide them, but it's usually at a much lower level than they do the 1 and 2 bedrooms. And so we felt that blend, we tried to get the greatest blend that we could to land where the 1 and 2 and 3 bedrooms would be. Does that make sense?
Thank you, Sean.
Sorry.
John, I have a question while you're there. I love that thinking. There's a difference between the apartments and hotels, yes?
Yes, yeah.
You kind of looked at them that way.
Yeah,
without
length of
the-
time, you don't put the utilities, or you don't get your license at a hotel transferred to your address.
Okay, but this is, am I reading this wrong? But this is showing square foot, not unit.
Well, there's a unit on the right.
I'm missing it.
The right columns per unit.
All the way out. Okay, sorry.
Right, that's how we arrived at the unit.
it.
As we progress in this presentation, there'll be the opportunity to review either or.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So these become the scenario A, the fees with park and non-residential charges for the park fee. We, carrying that one step further, when it comes to single family, as I mentioned, this is an illustrative example of different housing types, ranging from an accessory dwelling with just 750 square feet to an estate house with 3,500 square feet. And each unit has a different average number of people. And we do have statistical data to back that up. And there is a nexus, especially with transportation, between trip generation and people per dwelling unit. But it peaks out at 3,500 square feet and actually starts to go down beyond that. So what our recommendation is to go ahead and charge the average of $2.77 per square foot up to a maximum amount not to exceed, no matter how big the house is, of a total of $7,362 per that dwelling unit. We feel this is legally defensible. It's also equitable, and I think fairly simple to administer, more complicated than what you do now, but it would be more equitable. And this is the scenario B without the parks fee charged to non-residential users. Of course, the dwelling unit fee goes up, the non-residential fees go down overall, and you can see the hotel fees go down per room as well. But this is another area where we're asking for council's input. We recognize that, I think staff and anybody that lives here recognizes that people from outside the community do use the parks. And whether they're staying in a hotel or they're on their lunch break, they might be out using the park. So it's fair to consider a non-residential charge for parks. We feel it's a fairly modest charge, by the way, but it's something that consultants would recommend. And then this fee would be the commensurate fee, goes up by 10 cents roughly per square foot with scenario B for the single-family dwelling developments. So then the maximum fee would peak out at $7,622 per dwelling unit. So it is a, increase over what you're currently charging, no doubt. But since you haven't updated this for 20 years, I guess that makes sense. Now we have several examples to show you how these new fees would compare to other communities, and this might even give you additional information. to make a decision.
And these haven't changed since you saw them on the 2nd, but I just wanted to provide those again, just so that you can see. Here's the hotel's been the one that we've talked about quite a bit, and so you can see what it was before we did some reductions to the park CIP, and then you can also compare by rooms or by square feet, and you can also compare with and without the non-residential parks fee. This is a restaurant compared to several others. An office space compared to several other communities. An apartment building.
Are these the maximum defendable fees?
These
or
are the
just
maximum defendable fees. I did not, in your packet, you have an alternative fee schedule that was recommended to us by some developers, and that I didn't go back and update these with that.
Okay, thank you.
And then the average home of, say, 2,300 square feet, smaller home, like a cottage home, and then the annexation fee. Do you want to talk about this,
sure.
John?
So unlike the impact fees, where the impact fees are based on capital improvements to maintain levels of service, this annexation fee is really based on operational fees, operational department expenses to accommodate annexation areas and all the planning and service area needs for police, fire, and other services they will require. This methodology that you used before, we felt was a fairly good methodology. It's been tested over time. And so we went with your prior methodology and updated it. To update it, we had to look at your property tax supported budgetary department expenses from the general fund for things like library, police, fire, things like that. And then we divided that by the total number of residential customers and non-residential customers within the city boundary to figure out what the, cost per customer was in terms of these operational elements. And it equated to about $1,133 per residential equivalent unit in today's dollars. And then we looked at your current fee, your prior fee, which is your current fee of $750 from 1997, escalated that to today's dollars. It would go to about $1,419 per customer unit if you were to just escalate your current fee, and compared that to the proposed fee of $1,133, and you can see there's a difference. And so we're recommending that you go from your prior current fee of $750 to the new calculated fee of $1,133 per residential equivalent for your annexation fee. And even though it's less than what your escalated fee would be if you just escalated your old fee, it does, I think, represent the fact that the city has been getting more efficient over time, at least in terms of operational costs per capita in the city. And so you can pass that operational cost savings over to future property owners that want to annex into the city and just update this fee.
Quick question. Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Woody. You have not proposed an escalator for the annexation fee.
Well, we would recommend you do escalate it each year going forward. That's a great point. We usually recommend that with all the fees, but then that's kind of a prerogative decision during your annual review of all your fees, whether you're going to escalate them by the CPI or the engineering news record or some other escalation rate. But that's a great point, and I don't know whether staff wants to put that into the resolution or ordinance or not, if there is an ordinance tonight.
At this point, we hadn't recommended escalating the annexation fee, just because there's not the same, since the impact fees are based on that CIP cost that we can easily pull construction costs increases out of the engineering news record. That's a published document. But the same thing doesn't seem to apply necessarily to the way this fee's calced with your budgets. They're not tied to that same type thing. So at this point, we haven't.
Continue to get more efficient then.
Right. So at this point, we haven't recommended that. For what you'll see next is the fee schedule.
Okay, thank you.
Question on the
Woody?
annexation fee, if I could. If you're going to annex 2 acres into the city, and you're going to put 1 house on it, that's the fee you pay?
I'm sorry, Woody,
Thank
that's
you.
probably more of a staff question,
A
but
2-acre annexation.
2-acre annexation?
And putting a house on each acre, is that all I'm paying for the annexation fee?
It's per unit, and so there's one of 2 ways that the code looks at this. And there's, if the annexation request comes forward with a subdivision, then it would be by number of units for homes or other. And so if they annex in those 2 acres at an R3, what you're talking about is an R1, it's very low density.
Gotcha.
So they would pay that fee per unit as they would subdivide. If they annex in raw property at a zone, let's say C17, then they would pay the theoretical, you'd take the size of the lot, divide that by number of units per acre, multiplied by 1133. And that's how you would come up with
We've
that.
used
Okay,
3.
so that annexation's a front cost, up front. Just use
Yeah, it
Coeur.
happens-
Tell me about Coeur, how you came up with those numbers.
So the way that we came up with those numbers was that theoretical number based upon the area that came in, the zoning that came in, and those anticipated units.
At $700 a unit.
Multiplied by 750 per.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Let's see. Additional questions?
Go ahead, Dan.
Just to clarify for both myself and folks watching, and, because it gets confused, it's like, bottom line, we all say we want to have growth pay for itself, which, we've also heard that that's still going to be a relative term because, the impacts on growth, we're going to get it from different sources, but, what we can charge for an annexation fee, and again, like with Woody, somebody's going to get something that's pretty easy to figure out, 4 or 5 units on this amount, and that's all you can do, versus the Coeur, which, that's on everybody's top of mind, because that was the most recent. It's huge. It's over. And so, what we did with, the Coeur annexation fee, which on one hand sounds like, kind of a lot, $1 million point something at times, I think 2 different paydays or something. And that's something pretty immediate. And then down the road, when they actually do all of their plat maps and all that, and then there's going to be a whole nother set of fees that people are going to pay per one. So in terms of really the impact to the city and to everybody else, it's going to be a compilation of those things.
That's right. Yeah,
Is
and
that on
remember
track?
too, if the developer wants to build the roads and they're on the list, the CIP list, they may not pay any impact fees because they will get credit for what they do provide.
Okay,
So
okay.
it just gives the city kind of leverage in that developer agreement process.
Yeah, okay.
Sean, do you want to come back up here? You're looking for 3 actions from us tonight.
Correct.
The first one is probably the simplest part of it, and that is to just adopt the capital improvement plan, correct?
Correct.
And then we would adopt or accept the development impact fee annexation report. Is that an adoption or an acceptance? Adoption, okay. And, and then the third one is adoption of fees themselves. And typically, don't we have to do this by ordinance?
No, we typically do fees by resolution.
We do. So after we adopt the impact and annexation fees, then an ordinance will come back to us to actually do that adoption of those fees?
No, they're adopted by ordinance. We did the amendments to the development fee ordinance by ordinance, but we don't do the fees by ordinance.
Okay, thank you. So why don't you stay up here and let us move through these actions, and then we can make sure that staff understands that what we're doing at that point.
Okay. We are to number 3, and this is where I guess the decisions are actually made, the shift in decisions, depending on council's preference. And so we've made it through 1 and 2. Do you want to go to 3, or are you ready to do 1 and 2?
Well, I need to open the hearing first, and we do have one person wishing to testify, so.
Okay. Perfect.
Okay.
Do.
I'm sorry, I was talking, was there something else you guys need to do first?
We have a few more slides, and then
Oh, well, we wouldn't want to miss
right?
a few more slides.
We still have 4 hours in the day.
Okay, so just these slides are pretty quick to get through. So
Are these
so
for
this is
amusement purposes only?
This is the actual fees. Now remember that the report that Todd just presented on, that's the maximum defendable fee. This is what the various options for the actual fee schedule. Okay, so this is to adopt new fees based on that study that we just presented on and provide for an annual escalation of the fees. So options that council has are to charge the non-residential parks fee or not, charge multifamily by the square foot or the dwelling unit, charge accommodations by the square foot or room, escalate at that engineering news record, 5-year average of 3.9% per year, or escalate at a lower percentage. We ran it at 1.5 for you, so you could see what that would look like. And either adopt the maximum defendable fees from the report, or also when we met with a group of developers, they presented something that was slightly lower on a few of the categories and also kind of phased in. So we've given that as an option for you too. In addition, you could come up with your own option, but we're trying to kind of make this digestible because there's an infinite number of options, and that would get to be exhausting.
Can I, just one question on
Yes.
the escalator, I missed the last meeting. The 3.9%, can you explain how we arrived at that?
Yes, so there's engineering news record, puts out a construction cost index every month, actually. So then you can go and you can compare December of this year with December 5 years ago, and it's just straight numbers. And then you just basically, divide the two numbers to get a percent per year to escalate. So we went back 5 years and saw what's been happening to scale it forward.
Thank you.
Yep.
It's just a benchmark that municipalities and highway departments, et cetera, use as a way to do those kinds of calculations. It's a well-respected
Right.
benchmark throughout the country that's used to establish those rates.
And there's a building cost index and construction cost index. The construction cost index is more like materials and labor related, and then the building cost index is more like building costs related.
You gave an option, though, of 3.9 or 1.5. So that's what, in my mind, I thought seems kind of arbitrary.
The 1.5 is arbitrary. I was just asked to run it. Yeah, as like a lower of, to not leave them constant, but not have it be as high as the engineering news record. So just so that you could see what would that be like. But I mean, that's what I'm saying. There's an infinite number. I wouldn't go above the 3.9. I don't think there would be justification for that.
And actually, we wouldn't be necessarily adopting a number. We could use to, or choose to use the ENR recommendations or prognostications for that as we escalate each year, right?
You could. So what we heard from the development community is it would be nice to have the fees laid out for 5 years so that they know what's coming, because they might have a project that's, in 2025, and they can run their fees then. If it's this moving target of, I don't know if it's going to be escalated by what number it's going to be escalated by, that's a little more difficult for them. So that was feedback that we got when Hillary and Sean and I went to NIBCA. And so that's what we proposed.
That makes sense.
Yep. Okay, so this is, you've already seen this, but this is the 2024 fee with non-residential parks, and I put off to the side, you have to choose one of those two options for multifamily, and you have to choose options for accommodations. This is without the non-residential parks fee, and again, you have to choose those options. And then the easiest way, you guys have prints that have kind of all of this, but it was really hard to put that in a presentation format. So what I thought the easiest way here is to kind of show you the 2024 fee and then 2028 escalated at 1.5 and escalated at 3.9, so that you could kind of compare those all in one table. You guys have all the options in front of you, and I did ask that they print it on big paper, because otherwise they're just too small. There's just too much going on those sheets.
Another quick question. You said NIBCA would prefer to know the escalator for the next 5 years, but they couldn't have possibly said, I'm guessing, they didn't say choose the 3.9, because that means 5 years from now it's a 20% increase.
I do believe we're showing that at the time, were we not? I'm pretty sure we were. I don't think we've changed that number.
So you had both, though? You had the 3.9 and
I don't think we ran the 1.5 at that point. You're right. I think that that was asked of us since.
Thank you.
Yep. Let's see. This is the same table, but without those non-residential parks fees. And then, let's see, this shows the annexation fee. So this is in here because now, the very next slide, I'm going to compare it to the developers, and so we wanted you to be able to see this. This also shows the annexation fee there at the bottom. So when we met with some developers, they were giving us information on what they felt the market could bear. And I'm not going to speak for them, but this is what I heard from the meeting, was that they felt like some of the fees were a bit high, and they were worried that it would start to make those types of developments not come forward. And you know that if the fees are too high and they stop developing multifamily, then you're not collecting the fee anyway. So you do want to be sensitive to that. I'm not necessarily saying that I have that data. I'm just going off of what was shared with me. And so this is what they, in the meeting, proposed to us. And so we wanted to give that to you because you had asked us to do a little more outreach with the development community. And so what they wanted to see was the 2024 fee for multifamily set at $3,500 per dwelling unit. And they did want it to be dwelling unit, not square foot. And then they wanted to have a maximum cost per square foot for non-residential be $425. So there were three fees that were above $425. I put in this column here, I put the maximum defendable fee, so that you could compare it without having to flip back and forth. And then accommodations, they weren't saying get rid of the park's fee to hotels altogether, but they were saying phase it in. And so 50% of the fee in 2024, 75% of the fee in 2025, and then by 2026, they're used to it, and it's kind of back on schedule. So that, I just wanted you to see this. Go ahead.
Sorry, excuse me just a second. So what you're saying, I want to get my head around this phasing piece.
Yeah.
It doesn't, if the fee is due at the time that they pull the permit, the phasing would occur through multiple different projects over the next 2 years, is what you're saying. Not the same project being phased, but.
Yes.
It's phasing in of the fee. So the fee could be higher, but we're keeping it lower for the first year, and then we're raising it up a little bit more in the second year, and then, which has been described to you before. I mean, there is, when you go from not updating your fees for 20 years, some communities will phase in fees to just make them a little easier to stomach on the development community. So that was something that they asked. I'm not saying this is something you have to go with. I'm saying that this was presented to us. It made sense.
Trying to be clear about how that would, why that would be necessary. If there's a hotel that is being built, it is going to have this fee. It's not going to phase the fee for that particular hotel, and it's not like there's 30 or 40 hotels like there are 30 or 40 homes.
They would be charged the fee for the year that was active in the fee schedule at the time they submitted a complete application. So that's my understanding of that's how they decide what fee. So if they submit a complete application on June 30th and it doesn't change to the new fee till July 1, they're under the fee of the previous schedule.
I just wanted to clarify too, because you asked the question before all of this began, and I think I answered it correctly, but I think we missed a little bit between Woody and Miller, is that they're collected when they actually pick up the permit, but they're determined when the permit comes in. Does that make sense? So you asked when they paid them, and they pay them when they pick up the permit, but when they give us a complete application, that's the date that they're determined.
Okay.
Okay?
And then also remember that there's credits, which we've talked about before, if they're not building on vacant property, if there was something there before, all that plays into how the fee is determined. Okay, so now we're to the action, and I think this is where you would open the hearing, but I'll leave that up to Randy. So we've got these three things that we need to hopefully get through tonight: adopting the CIPs, adopting the report, and then adopting some form of a fee schedule. I did have option A and B. I did that for simplicity. There are other options that you could choose too. I'm just trying to keep this organized. So the developer recommended one that I just threw up there, or option B, maybe the maximum defendable fee, but then you've got to decide what options you want to go with. And then the effective date, which we've proposed as July 1. Okay.
Thank you.
Good.
Oh, God.
Okay, now we're going to open the public hearing, and we have one person wishing to testify, Bill Regan. Bill, welcome.
Thank you.
I know you've been anxiously awaiting your moment in the sun up here.
Not anxiously awaiting.
Well, I have been then.
Okay, we didn't do this right last time. Do I need to be sworn in for this, or?
Yes, you do.
Okay, can you affirm for me, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, it is. Okay, name, address? Not important. Okay, Bill Regan. Thank you for allowing me to come speak. I think I came to you the first time a couple months ago, and all this was brand new to us. And we asked you, hey, just give us a minute to try to understand this and to meet with the team that's put this together. And you did that, and we very much appreciate that. And I think you have an unbelievable team that's working on this. We very much enjoyed working with everybody. They've been very forthcoming with the information, and it's made it more palatable so we can understand at least what's taking place here. And so I just wanted to, there's been a lot of questions asked, and I wanted to kind of clarify a couple of the things that maybe weren't, at least get confusing for me. First of all, we talk about the annexation fee, and we want it to pay for growth that's happening down the road. I think when we talk about the impact fees, you have to remember that everything that's happened with the parks and the police and the roads and fire, with the exception of bond issues, has been paid for with property taxes. And we've been paying property taxes on these properties for a lot of time. So it's not like we're just coming into the neighborhood and going to now tap into all your services and make you pay for our guests or us to be able to use the services. So I think that's one thing to keep in mind. The second thing is, I think Councilman Gookin, you asked, what's the fee today? And what is it going to be with this new plan? And so I tried to do a little scenario because, you know, we have proposed 140 room property, which is going to be coming before design review in the next couple months here. And so I did it, you know, on a couple ways, and it's a little goofy, it's a little tough to figure out, but so I took the most expensive part of the transportation side of it to try to err on the high side. And it might not be perfect, but the impact fee today would be around $12,000, and that might be, let's just say I erred, double it and say it's $24,000 because I didn't have all the right information. If you look at what's being proposed today, with the park fee charged to both the non-commercial and residential, the fee would be $362,000. And if you took it out and charged the park fee to only residential, it's $195,000. And so the cost is going up significant. And we acknowledge costs should go up. I mean, it's been 20 years since this has been adopted, so we totally understand that. I think, Councilman McEvers, you tried to understand it last meeting I was at and said, God, this isn't that bad, you know. Look, we're right in the middle of these things. And I think if you take the impact fee by itself, compare it on here, I think you're right. It doesn't really look that bad. I had somebody from our organization run the cost of what our building permit would be with this hotel. And to our best guess, it'd be about $1.2 million. And that's a substantial amount of money. And I think that substantial amount of money has caused these hotels to not be built. This is our third time that we've proposed building additional rooms. And we're trying this time. We haven't been successful the last couple times because of cost. And it's not just the impact fees, it's what does the design review require? You know, there's a lot of things that are thrown on the project that add to the overall cost. And so I ask you to consider that. I think, Councilman Miller, I know you're really concerned about workforce housing. I think the lack of hotels is one of the biggest drains on workforce housing in this community. I can't tell you how many short-term rentals there are out in this community. That before the short-term rentals came, those were great rentals that were available for working people in this community. And I think that the fact that it is so costly, prohibitive to build, we're not seeing it happen, and we're seeing inventory that could go to workforce housing taken out and being put into short-term rentals. And I think it's a real problem. It's a real problem for our employees. And so I think that.
You're the only one, so we're
Okay.
going to
Okay.
allow you to finish.
So I think there's some impetus for us to try to make something to happen here. The hotels are they're not your killer in this situation. I mean, if you take our parks portion of this is 166,000, on the low end. I think the last hotel I know of that's been built is this thing at the Outback Steakhouse. And it's been 4 years, 5 years since a hotel's been built. So you're talking about 2-3 hotels. So, what $600,000, and I can't remember what the parks piece is. Is it 8.1 million that they're asking for? So it's 600,000 out of that, but it has an impact. And do any of these things by themselves kill these projects? No, they probably don't. But when you put them all together, it's a huge burden. It's prevented us from building in the future. We want to be able to build. We want to be able to provide jobs. We want to be able to increase the viability of businesses downtown. And we just appreciate your consideration. We recognize they have to go up. The last thing I would just say is on the escalator. We got through 20 years without an escalator on there, and we seem to get by just fine. 3.9 is a big number, and I understand it's an index that you can count on, that's out there. I think there needs to be some predictability to it if you want it. I certainly understand the 1.5, but these are big costs and they're real costs. But I just want to close in saying we've enjoyed working with the staff. They've been incredible. Thank you for giving us this opportunity.
Thank you. So I'll close the public hearing. And now, Sean, or whoever, you want to come up and take us through the proposed actions?
Yes, and so these are them. So there's a number of them. So I guess start with the first, which is adopting the impact fee capital improvement plans, the CIPs, for the public facilities that are eligible for impact fees. That is the first step.
Mr. Mayor, I think this is the easy one to do since we've seen it before, and it's just a list of projects which we can amend on a regular basis if need be. So I would like to go ahead and make a motion to approve Resolution 24008, which is adoption of the capital improvement plan for parks, transportation, police, and fire in support and development of impact fees.
Second.
You have a motion to second. I see no further discussion. Will the clerk take the roll, please?
Miller,
Aye.
McEvers,
Yes.
Gookin,
Yes.
English,
Yes.
Wood,
Yes.
Evans.
Yes.
Okay. So number 2 is adoption of the impact and annexation fee report by resolution. Once again, as Todd has explained, this is the maximum defensible fee and the methodology of which we had used to come up with that. There is no binding cost associated with that that's placed on a developer. It's just whether or not you would like to adopt that by resolution.
Mr. Mayor, again, this item seems to be, this is not setting the fees, this is just the maximum defendable fees, which was presented to us. And the real scary one is next, so we'll just go ahead, it's okay, and do this one first. I'd make a motion to approve Resolution 24009, which is adoption of the development impact fee and annexation report.
I had a little quick question, if I can
Oh,
make sure.
second.
We get a second
Okay,
first.
Second.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you. Now you can ask.
Okay, this one is about keeping the annexation fee moving forward, yes?
No.
No. Help me out, Dan.
That's the
Actually-
justification for the fee itself. So that was the slide where it came to the 1133 and had
Okay.
the circle. It's the
I just wanted to-
methodology.
I was just thinking, there's not much left to annex into our city.
No.
So this isn't going to be long-term very significant. We're kind of bordered out, just and I don't know if it applies here, but I just needed to get it off my chest.
Those are the impact fees too, and so it's maximum defendable. I did ask staff to produce the increases over the past few years, which was if we would, and the value they used was 3.3% to increase what our impact fees were, and I looked at them and compared them with what the maximum defendable fee was. And for most of them, the new maximum defendable fee is higher than what it would have been in the past, except for restaurants. For some reason, the maximum defendable fee they calculated for restaurants is $19,931, $20,000. And if we had just escalated that, it would have been $31,000. So I don't know why there's a disconnect there, and I really don't want to sit here longer to find out. And so
We'll run with that.
that was just interesting to me. But the key here is that even if we did raise our rates, our impact fees, like Post Falls does every year, we've lost all that income. All that stuff that would have paid for fire trucks and a police station and so on is gone, and hopefully we're going to fix it tonight by moving forward.
Amen.
But otherwise, this seems to be rather, this is not the big enchilada, which is the impact fee schedule.
Correct.
Therefore, that's why I made the motion.
Will the clerk take the roll, please?
McEvers?
Yes.
Gookin?
Yeah.
English?
Yes.
Wood?
Yes.
Evans?
Yes.
Miller?
Aye.
Okay,
Now we come
two
to
of
the hard
three,
one.
and the third one's the enchilada. So this is the one where there's as Melissa had stated, there's an infinite number of ways to do this. Staff has put forward what we assume to be the most acceptable to council. The developer group had also provided something for your consideration, by room, by square foot, when to start, and whether or not we take those parks fees and start at 50% and escalate them 25% over those 3 years. And then what is that escalation percentage?
Could we, by
So-
chance, given the infinite nature of some of the, could we have a short intermission?
Oh, sure.
A bladder break.
Oh, that too, okay.
We're going to recess for 5
And
minutes.
then, yeah, they can lobby and, okay.
Thank you.
Girls could sit here all night.
Damn you.
Okay, we are back, and we have one more resolution to consider regarding annexation fees, and that is the adoption of the impact fees and the annexation fees. Sean, what choices do we have to make?
Oh, not again.
There's a number of them. I'll run you through them right now. And so there is this maximum defendable fees that was provided. You guys have paper copies up there. The last page is also the page which is here, which is the developer proposed fees. I guess, so consider those as we work through this. First up, I would direct you towards consideration between A or B up here, which is kind of this yellow goldenrod color, of whether or not you would rather have staff determine what those fees would be by square footage or by dwelling unit.
Was there a slide earlier that had all these decisions summarized for us?
Wasn't it?
It's
Yeah,
kind
it's the
of between these three slides.
Yeah, but Christie has the one that I'm talking about. So we wanted to. There were 5 separate items.
Options, yeah.
Options. It's titled options. There you go.
Okay, so we can certainly do it this way, that's fine. So non-residential parks fees or not for the.
But a question for you, proceed. So we were given more information than is available for the IRS's annual instruction packet for Form 1040.
I thought you were going to say it wasn't in your packet, and I was going to.
No.
It was.
There was a tremendous amount of information. It was oozing from the pages.
Yes.
But when I saw this, I'm like, I don't remember seeing that in the packet, but I was like, yes, that's kind of what we want. So these are the individual decisions we make, and you can help guide us through those.
Correct.
Okay, cool.
All right, so the first bullet point is to charge non-residential parks fees or not. And so, as you've heard tonight, in the past, the city has not charged park fees to commercial-type developments. They have been applied to residential permits only. And so, with this iteration, staff and our consultant has recommended to council to consider including parks fees for other than non-residential, or other than residential.
Other than residential.
Correct.
And so that's not just hotels, that's retail, other types of commercial.
Correct.
Industrial, et cetera, because there's an assumption that, excuse me, that some of these businesses bring in non-residents to work in the city, and also those non-residents would use the parks. Is that correct?
Correct, right. Visitors and employees.
So what's the consensus on that, council?
Well, I think we need to charge the non-residential parks fees.
I agree. I think it makes sense.
I would like not to charge the parks. I think we build our parks for residents, not for visitors or companies. So I think pulling those fees off of commercial, hotels, restaurants, to me, makes sense.
And my concern is how defendable it is. I think Councilwoman Miller's made some excellent points when we've talked in the past about, well, I guess anecdotally, we know that visitors are at least using some of the downtown parks. And so I absolutely understand that. But I don't know that it's defendable, and I would anticipate that maybe we would find out in court whether it was defendable to charge for parks, charge the hotels for parks way out in, the North 40. So I'm really struggling with that. I certainly don't want to leave our parks underfunded. We have a lot of projects that we absolutely need to get done. But I know that there's other options on how to raise some of that money. So that's where I'm very conflicted. I'm going to keep listening to discussion.
And since I was brought up, I feel like we have had discussions about this on the parks, and I think that these fees are reasonable for hotels and other structures. I think our churches do a lot of activities in our parks. Our hotel guests, regardless of where they are, it's a valuable amenity to these hotel visitors. It's known, it's marketed by our hotel properties to come to visit our parks. So when we have more and more visitors over the years who are coming into our parks, we have more and more guests from out of town that are in the swings. That's fewer swings that our residents who paid for that park can use. And so I feel very strongly that these parks fees need to build better parks where our residents who paid for them are closer to and have more accessibility to with small families, and they have the same opportunity for great amenities that our downtown parks that a ton of visitors get to enjoy. So I feel strongly that that parks fee is it is justifiable, and I don't know that you could say that it would be a stretch by anyone's imagination in a community like ours that tourists didn't enjoy the parks that our residents paid for. So that's my feeling on that one.
I think the issue that I'm struggling with, Kiki, on that is this park's already been built. And so you really can't call it an impact fee when it's maintenance we're talking about.
Maybe I'm not being clear. When we put more hotels so that their guests use the park that's already built, there's less and less capacity for the people who paid for that park. And therefore, our residents who already aren't coming to downtown because in the summer it's just super, super busy, the new parks that are being built is what can benefit them. So I'm talking about it displacing and use and spreading out that use properly.
Dan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. But what we're talking about here is growth. And what I think Kiki's mentioning is stuff that's already here. People are already living here. It's to address one of Christie's questions, whether we take it on commercial for parks impact fees or not, parks will still be made whole. If I understand it, the rates for residential will go up. The impact fee will go up for residential if we choose not to put it on the parks. At least I remember seeing that slide.
That's correct.
Put it on the commercial.
No, if we take it off of commercial, commercial's not paying parks, residential will pay more. But like I said earlier, residents are the ones who use the parks. And we're talking right now about growth. Impact fees is growth. So if you already live here, you already paid for the parks, you're paying for them annually through your property taxes. But if you're going to be building new houses here, that's who the new parks are for. So the people who are building new houses, those are the ones who are primarily using the parks, using the swings. The commercial, I don't see them having an impact on parks. And apparently a lot of other cities don't either.
Dan?
Yeah. We've got a different perspective on this, but I absolutely believe that the non-residents use the parks, and I'm not talking about just, who's in hotels or not, but I mean, I remember when Councilman Ettinger over the years said, why can't we charge something to those Spokane people who are coming here? And I don't know, and being very realistic, practical, I don't know how you would go in and kind of police, show me your property tax bill that, you did this, or you're a hotel guest, or are you somebody driving over from Spokane? Yes, we pay for the park when it's there and it starts, but just like you say, we're going to probably have to add an extra swing set, or they're going to wear out quicker, or the grass is going to wear out quicker. So again, to me, it just seems like common sense. But
yeah, but the wearing out, that would be a maintenance issue that you can't use impact fees for.
Right.
So, Mr. Mayor, I just want to say one more time, this is about growth. This is about new residents in the city. The city's growing, and maybe the city gets a new hotel. Can you justify that if there's a new hotel, that it will require that we build another park?
It's not necessarily that it would be a brand-new park, Dan. Take into account, I think what Ms. Miller said, or Council Member Miller, was, out here, this park hasn't sat the way it was the day that it was finished. there has been additional growth that has happened. They put up shelters, and so there's that certain percentage of growth eligible funds that are allowed to be spent within an existing park, but a very small amount of it because that growth isn't 100%. It's not a brand-new park in a brand-new neighborhood that needs that 100% coverage. It's the McEwen Field that qualifies for, 18% or something like that of those dollars that would come through the door. So it's, I guess, let's make sure that we're speaking apples to apples, that it's not 100% and it's not always a brand-new park.
I'm just not sure it's going to be legally defensible, and I think we will be challenged. I think we need money for parks, and I would like to have council visit other options, such as parking rates, because those truly are the people that are coming here, spending the weekend, spending the day, whatever, and using the facilities. And so I'm more inclined to look at other ways to fund the park, rather than put it on the back of commercial entities. I don't really want to impact economic development in that way.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
Christy has a great concern, and I'd love to hear the opinion of our legal counsel on that, please.
The statute simply requires that the proportionate share be fair and reasonable, and a fair and reasonable methodology. We've hired a consultant who has a lot of experience in this and has said that this is a fair and reasonable methodology. I'm satisfied that the data that's been presented and the methodologies that's been presented is defensible, whatever fees you choose up to the maximum that are recommended by the consultant.
So to keep us from spending the night here, I know you wanted to have a sleepover, but it would seem to me that we need to have motions to formulate the final motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to take a stab at a motion.
Okay.
And I anticipate a lot of further discussion, so let me make a motion to approve resolution number 24-010, adoption of impact and annexation fees, with the following options. Is that how I should be listing this?
Sure, go for it.
That we charge non-residential parks fees, that we charge multifamily by the dwelling unit, that we charge accommodations by room, and that we escalate at the ENR 5-year average of 3.9 per year. And the next one, and adopt the maximum defendable fees. You want that included as well? You'd like that?
Yes, that would be part of it. You don't have to choose the maximum defendable, but that's up to whoever's making the motion.
Well, let me throw that in and adopt the maximum defendable fees.
Okay. We have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Now, further discussion. Keep your comments brief, and if you've already argued it, you don't need to argue it again.
Arguing is fun.
Yes, it is.
I agree with the first four of those. I would like to discuss amending the motion to take out the phasing options that were suggested for this, and to also I'd like to have council discuss on making the all of the fees effective immediately except for single-family and multifamily dwellings.
Is phasing part of the
It wasn't part of the
The
motion.
phasing wasn't in the motion.
I think I
Phasing
asked
was
to
recommended,
recommend
but
it.
that wasn't in the motion that was made.
So in this one, you have removed out the 1 and 2 year phasing for the fee?
Well, that's why,
It's not up there.
right, the options are somewhat across multiple slides, because there's a number of them.
So that one comes up
So
later?
these are the high-level ones here, and as you kind of drop down here, it's, do you want accommodations, 50 rooms or more, or 50 rooms or less? That's another consideration if you want to, otherwise we can go just by room. That's
Well, sorry,
fine.
thank you
That's
for
what the
letting me
motion was.
clarify. I'm just wanting, are we going to be making multiple motions for
Yes.
the next hour to
I
get
wouldn't,
through
I wouldn't say
multiple
that this is a
pieces?
phasing issue as much as an effective date issue.
Yeah, do you want to add
Right,
an
but
effective
there's still-
You have to have an
A and
effective
B
date
and-
of the
Well,
fees.
But phasing is actually part of the discussion too. But I see what you're saying.
Everything
So
per
I
square foot.
would
Okay.
like to amend that motion.
Here we go.
We're just seeing things just a little bit differently. So I'd like to amend the motion to remove the parks fees. I would like to amend it to charge multifamily by square foot, charge the hotel by unit, and the escalation, I would like us to start that out at 1.5 per year, and then revisit that in 2 years. And then I'd also like, including in the motion, a phasing of the fees that was suggested earlier.
Okay, as I remember, we need a second to the amendment.
I think that's a substitute motion. I don't think that's.
Yes, the person making the motion has to agree to the amendment. If not, then the motion stays and you have to vote on it. If it fails, then you can make a new motion.
So the first motion is still on the table?
Yeah, this wouldn't be an amendment. You could do a substitute motion.
It's a substitute motion.
Okay, it's a substitute.
Your motion is a substitute motion?
Correct.
And I'll second it for discussion, because I promised Christie I would always do that.
You'll always look at me like
So let's review again, go through your substitute motion. You've got to make it, rather than removing anything or adding anything, just make your motion what you want it to be.
My motion is there would be no non-residential parks fees charged. There would be, multifamily would be assessed at square foot, not by dwelling unit. Hotel would be assessed at unit, not square feet. The escalation would not be 3.9, it would be 1.5 for the next 2 years, and then council would revisit that.
And then adopt a maximum or
And
phase?
and adopt, and phase in the fees,
All fees?
the parks fees. Or, the parks are not in it. So the phasing of the fees to give our local businesses time to adjust to these new fees.
And how is that phasing?
Well, the 50%.
50, 25, 25?
Correct.
I thought that was just for parks.
Clarification, if I may.
Yeah, just a minute. Is there a second to this?
I did, I seconded.
Oh, that's right.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe from the presentation brought forward tonight, the phasing was in regards to accommodations, not across the board. Did I miss something?
So it was
Right.
50, 75% non-residential park
thank you.
fees for years 1 and 2.
Thank you.
For hotels.
Just for hotels, so it was accommodations? Just for
Yes,
hotels?
just for-
Okay, so I was
accommodations.
correct, okay.
Thank you. All right, then I need to remove that phasing.
Okay?
And I'll approve that.
Do you,
I
okay,
concur.
thank you. The second approves. All right, so we would then take a vote on the substitute motion.
I'm going to call for the question here.
Oh,
Why do you go second first?
The substitute motion
is the current motion.
has to be done before the original motion.
Okay. I'm new to this. General?
Miss-
Discussion.
We
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, can we have discussion?
It's always this. After
Yes.
Thank you. So, yeah, I would not, so we're not phasing the fees, in other words? We're
What-
just going to adopt the maximum, just a clarification?
Right, because the parks fees were the only ones that were suggested for phasing.
Okay, so I can agree to this except for, I think the escalator should be higher, but I'm not going to die on that hill.
Other discussion? Dan?
I won't vote for this as is, but I like the first motion, except I would rather see a 2% escalation just going forward. That's my 2 cents.
Okay, understanding that, will the clerk take the roll on the substitute motion, please?
Okay, on the substitute motion.
Making her work.
Miller,
No.
Evans,
No.
English,
No.
McEvers,
No.
Wood,
Yes.
Gookin.
Yes.
The motion fails. So will the clerk take the roll on the original
Can we
motion?
discuss the original motion, Mr. Mayor?
Well, we have been. Yes, you,
No, because there was a substitute motion offered
Right.
almost instantly. Yeah, so I got to disagree with the non-residential park fee. I don't agree with that impact. The by unit or room, I mean, to me, it's 50/50 because, you know, my eyes have glazed over at this point. Escalator 3.9 seems a little high. I would expect a cap maybe indexed to inflation that would be, you know, like a cap of 3 and then indexed to inflation after that. 1.5 actually makes a little bit more sense. And the escalator they used when they did the projections from 2004 was just 3.3%. I do agree with adopting the maximum, though, so I like that one, but I understand that that I'll probably be one of 2 no votes on this.
Discussion, Mr. Mayor?
yes.
I am concerned again about the escalator. I think it's just a little too high. There's no escalator for the annexation fee, but there is a large escalator for the proposed fees. So I think I'm not going to be able to support the motion based on that, but I would be able to support the motion when it comes back reworked with a lower escalator.
The escalation clause, let's talk about that for a moment. That isn't something that necessarily has to be decided tonight.
No, it does not.
So I might suggest, if the motion maker is agreeable, to let the council, because I've heard 3 or 4 different suggestions for what is an appropriate level of escalation. Why don't we pull that off the motion for now and work on that later?
The motion maker agrees.
And who did the second? Woody, do you agree to pull that for
No.
now? Pardon?
No.
You don't want to pull it?
No.
Okay.
I want to discuss it.
Okay.
I haven't had a chance because those guys are going all. So here's a different way to look at it, okay? It must be Edinger rubbing off on me. Ron, God dang it. 26 years. 26 years is what we're talking about trying to make up for, in my mind. And everybody, commercial, everybody residential, why we've boomed in 26 years is because of parks and because of things like this. It feels kind of like a payback, but it's not a payback on the people that are already here. It's the people that are coming here because it's so cool. It's so bitchin'. It's so nice. We're so famous over who we are and what we are. And we haven't touched the prices and the costs of doing the business for 26 years. That's my kind of perception of why there's no question to just make it as easy as you can, you know, and let's just go on. I don't think it's going to slow anything down. The Hilton's not going to stop. Bill's going to figure out a way to do the hotel, and it's still going to be awesome, and they'll have it paid for in no time. So,
Okay.
from the heart, okay.
I understand that, but the motion maker agreed to just pulling out the escalation clause so we can talk about that separately. We'll still do something, but it's whether it's 1.5, 2%, or 2.5. Do you agree to pulling that off the motion for now?
No, I want the 3.9.
Pardon?
I'm staying at the 3.9. I'm paying back the 26 years.
Okay.
So
Is
then
that
we go
okay?
back
So
to
you can go
vote on the
around it and do it
original
again.
full-
And
Sorry.
Mr. Mayor, I'd just add that it was 3.3% 20 years ago, and to go to 3.9% isn't a gargantuan leap.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just add, I think that we obviously need to raise the fees. Nobody disagrees on that. But we also have to make sure we don't kill economic development. And so we have to be fair and balanced. And that's all I'm asking is, let's try to take care of our businesses and also accomplish what we need. And I'm just suggesting that we meet somewhere in the middle.
Well, I think, I'm sorry, the left, over here, but I think that these folks who have looked at these things have done that. I think that they have put together, we are being fair. We have compared ourselves to other cities. We have had our building community and our economic development community enjoy an extremely low rate for decades. And so I think we are being fair. I don't feel like, in my conversations with the Building Contractors Association and the development community, that they're not here upset about this because they felt it was a long time coming. We aren't seeing a huge, slowing in what's happened in our economy. Well, our labor force and what we're doing with housing and all of that is much more of an effect. So I really feel like the information that they gave us was defensible because it is fair. And that's my thought.
Dan?
Mr. Mayor, so I'm going to agree with Christie on this. I think I would not want to go to 3.9 until I heard more from the business community as to what's that going to impact them. I also like your idea that we should just visit it on a regular basis and decide what it is. I mean, if things are getting more expensive, obviously it could be higher, but if things are going really well, I think it could be lower.
Well, let's see what we've got. Will the clerk take the roll on this motion, please?
Sure.
Original.
Miller,
Aye.
Evans,
Yes.
English,
Yes.
McEvers,
Yes.
Wood,
No.
Gookin.
No. Motion carries.
Now let's do it again. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion for a recess.
Thank you.
Which is my favorite part of school, to January 22nd, 2024 at noon in the Library Community Room here located at 702 East Front Avenue for a joint City Council Planning Commission and Ignite CDA workshop regarding the Atlas Riverfront development.
Second.
We have motion second. All in favor, respond with aye.
Aye.
Opposed with nay. Motion carries. We are adjourned.